Let's talk about something uncomfortable about what happens when you decide that your peace matters. When you wake up one day and realize that you can't keep setting yourself on fire just to keep other people warm. You pull back, you choose distance, and suddenly people are angry. Why? Because they were comfortable when you were uncomfortable. See, distance is a boundary, and boundaries are not walls, they are clarity. They say, this is where I end, and you begin. But when you start enforcing those lines, some people take it personally. They call you selfish, cold, distant, because they preferred the version of you that never said no. The version of you that tolerated, over-explained, apologized for things that weren't your fault, and stayed in places where you weren't valued. And the hardest part, some of these people will claim you don't care. But here's the truth, caring doesn't mean sacrificing your well-being to make someone else comfortable. You can love people and still choose to love yourself more. The guilt will come. Oh, they'll make sure of that. You've changed. You think you're better than us after everything I've done for you. But guilt is not proof that you've done something wrong. It's proof that you've done something different. And different is threatening to those who benefited from your silence. Distance doesn't ruin relationships, distance reveals them. It shows you who is truly in your life for you and who is there for what they could take from you. The ones who respect your boundaries, they love you. The ones who get mad, they loved what you gave them. Let's start with a simple truth. Boundaries are not about controlling other people, they are about respecting yourself. They are a way of saying, I know my worth and I will not allow anything that diminishes it. But here's the thing about boundaries when you set them. People who benefited from your lack of them will be the first to get upset. Not because your boundary is unreasonable, but because it disrupts their comfort. They were used to accessing you anytime they wanted, taking your energy without considering the cost, and expecting you to always be available, regardless of how drained you felt. And the moment you say no more, it shakes their world. Boundaries are a declaration that you will no longer be a doormat, that you will no longer engage in relationships that leave you feeling depleted, guilty, or disrespected. They are an act of self-care, a promise to yourself that you will not shrink just to make others comfortable. But let's be real, setting boundaries isn't easy. It requires unlearning years of conditioning that taught you that your value is tied to how much you do for others. Maybe you grew up in a household where saying no was seen as disrespectful. Maybe you were in friendships where you were only loved for what you could give. Maybe you were in relationships where sacrifice was mistaken for love. So when you finally decide that your peace is a priority, it feels unnatural at first. You feel guilty. You worry that you're being too harsh. You wonder if you should just let things slide again. But here's what you need to remember. Guilt is not an indication that you've done something wrong. It's an indication that you're doing something different. And different is uncomfortable. The world often glorifies selflessness, especially when it comes at your own expense. Society celebrates the people who give and give until they have nothing left. But let me ask you this, what good is it to pour from an empty cup? What happens when you give so much of yourself away that there's nothing left for you? Boundaries are the answer to that exhaustion. They are the way you protect your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. They allow you to show up for others not from a place of resentment, but from a place of abundance. They teach people how to treat you, but more importantly, they teach you how to treat yourself. And let's talk about the fear that setting boundaries will push people away. Here's the hard truth. The people who leave because of your boundaries were never truly there for you. They were there for what you provided. If someone only loves you when you have no limits, that's not love. That's convenience. So the next time you hesitate to say no, the next time you feel guilty for protecting your energy, remember this, setting a boundary is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of self-respect, and anyone who truly values you will respect the boundary because they respect you. There's something unsettling about change, especially when it means someone is stepping into their power. People don't like it when you stop playing the role they assigned you. They don't like it when you stop saying yes to everything, when you stop prioritizing their comfort over your well-being, when you stop showing up in ways that serve them but drain you. Here's the hard truth. Many people are not attached to you. They are attached to the version of you that serves them. The version that is always available, always agreeable, always putting their needs above your own. And when you start setting boundaries, choosing yourself, or even just growing beyond who you used to be, they take it personally. But let's be clear, your growth is not a betrayal. Your evolution is not a personal attack. It only feels that way to people who are benefiting from your stagnation. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how people cheer for you as long as your success, happiness, or boundaries don't inconvenience them? They'll say, I just want you to be happy, but what they really mean is, I want you to be happy as long as it doesn't affect me. This is why setting boundaries feels so difficult. It's not just about saying no, it's about breaking patterns. It's about disrupting the way things have always been. And when you disrupt a dynamic where you were always the giver, the fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who swallowed their feelings to avoid conflict, people get uncomfortable. They miss the version of you that didn't push back, the one that let things slide, the one that was easier to control. And here's where manipulation comes in. When people start losing control over you, they don't always say, I don't like that you're setting boundaries. Instead, they'll say, you've changed, you're being selfish, you don't care about me anymore. I miss the old you. And that last one, I miss the old you, that's the most revealing statement of all. Because what they really mean is, I miss the version of you that made my life easier, even at the cost of your own happiness. But here's the truth, you're not obligated to remain a version of yourself that makes other people comfortable. You are allowed to change, you are allowed to grow, you are allowed to set boundaries that protect your peace. And anyone who truly loves and respects you will celebrate that, not resent it. The people who get mad at your growth were never supporting you. They were supporting their idea of you. And when you step out of that box, when you break the mold, they have two choices: adjust to the real you or leave. Either way, you win, because the people who belong in your life will never require you to sacrifice yourself to stay in theirs. So if you're losing people because you're choosing yourself, let them go. You were never losing them, you were losing their control over you. And that is the most powerful thing you can reclaim. One of the biggest lies we are taught is that love, loyalty, and care means staying in relationships that drain us, staying in spaces that harm us, staying in cycles that break us. We are conditioned to believe that walking away is cold, that choosing distance is cruel, and that if we truly care about someone, we will endure anything to prove it. But here's the truth. Caring doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to chaos. Love is not measured by how much suffering you can endure for someone. Loyalty is not defined by how much of yourself you can lose in the process of holding on to someone else. You can love people deeply and still decide that their dysfunction, their patterns, and their toxicity are not things you are willing to absorb. Let's be honest, chaos can be addictive. It can disguise itself as passion, as deep connection, as a bond that is too strong to walk away from. But love should not feel like a constant battle. It should not leave you exhausted, questioning your worth, or feeling like you have to prove your value over and over again. Some people will test your patience, push your limits, and expect you to stay, no matter how badly they treat you. And when you finally choose to walk away, they'll say, I thought you cared about me. But caring doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment. It doesn't mean excusing patterns of disrespect or waiting for someone to change while they continue to hurt you. Caring means recognizing that you deserve peace too, that your mental and emotional well-being matters just as much as anyone else's. This applies to relationships, friendships, family, and even work environments. Some people will create chaos and expect you to clean it up. They will bring drama into your life and expect you to manage it. And the moment you step away, they will accuse you of not caring. But let's get one thing straight, caring is not about how much suffering you can tolerate. It's about knowing when to love someone from a distance. It's about understanding that your peace is not negotiable. And yes, walking away will come with guilt. You will question yourself. You will wonder if you should have done more, tried harder, been more patient. Because society has wired us to believe that choosing ourselves is selfish. But I need you to hear this: walking away from chaos does not mean you stop caring. It means you started caring about yourself too. And the people who truly love you, the ones who genuinely value and respect you, will never ask you to destroy yourself to prove it. Guilt is a powerful emotion. It has the ability to make us second guess ourselves, to keep us stuck in places we should have left long ago, and to make us feel responsible for things that were never ours to carry. And some people know this, some people use this. Guilt is one of the most effective manipulation tools because it plays on our deepest fears. The fear of being a bad person, of being seen as selfish, of not doing enough. The moment you start prioritizing yourself, someone will say, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? You don't care about me anymore? I guess I just don't matter to you. You've changed, and not in a good way. And suddenly you feel the weight of it, the obligation, the responsibility. You wonder if you are being selfish, if you should be doing more, if you're making a mistake by choosing yourself. That's the trap, that's the manipulation. Because guilt doesn't always come from things you've actually done wrong. Sometimes guilt is a weapon used to make you feel bad for making choices that benefit you. Think about it. How many times have you stayed in a toxic situation because you felt guilty for leaving? How many times have you ignored your own needs because you didn't want to hurt someone else's feelings? How many times have you given in, not because you wanted to, but because the guilt was too heavy to carry? People who use guilt as a tool are often the ones who benefited from your lack of boundaries. They don't want to see you change because that change means they can no longer manipulate you the same way. And it happens everywhere. In families where a parent might say, if you really loved me, you'd do this for me. In friendships where someone might guilt you into constantly prioritizing them over yourself. In relationships where a partner might make you feel bad for standing up for your own needs. Even in work environments where guilt is used to make employees feel like they owe their time and energy even when they're being overworked. But here's what you need to understand. Guilt is not proof that you've done something wrong. It's just proof that someone doesn't like your decision. And that's okay. There is a difference between guilt and accountability. If you've genuinely hurt someone, then yes, taking responsibility is necessary. But if someone is making you feel guilty simply because you are choosing to set boundaries, protect your peace, or say no, that's manipulation, not accountability. The moment you start recognizing guilt as a tool, you take away its power. You stop responding out of fear, you stop allowing people to use it against you, and the most important thing, you learn to sit with the discomfort. Because at first, setting boundaries will feel wrong, saying no will feel selfish, walking away will feel like betrayal. That's just the conditioning talking. That's just years of guilt being used to keep you small. But here's what I want you to remember. You do not owe anyone your peace. You do not owe anyone your exhaustion. You do not owe anyone your happiness just to keep them comfortable. So the next time someone tries to guilt you into doing something that goes against your well-being, pause. Ask yourself, is this guilt coming from a real mistake I made? Or is it coming from someone who doesn't like my boundaries? And if it's the second one, let it go. You don't have to carry that weight anymore. Distance has a way of revealing things we couldn't see when we were too close. It separates what is real from what is conditional, what is genuine from what is convenient. The moment you step back, Whether from a friendship, a relationship, a family dynamic, or even a work environment, you start to see people for who they truly are. Some people are only there for you when they have access to you. When you are readily available, always saying yes, always putting in effort, always showing up, but the second you pull back, when you stop overextending yourself, when you set boundaries, when you choose peace over drama, watch how people react. Distance is not what ruins relationships. Distance is what reveals them. Who stays, who leaves, and who was never really there. The people who genuinely care about you will respect your need for space. They will understand that life changes, that you are growing, that you cannot always be the version of yourself they once knew. They won't take your distance as a personal attack. They will trust the foundation of your relationship enough to know that it doesn't require constant proximity to remain strong. But then there are the others, the ones who suddenly stop calling, the ones who guilt trip you for taking time for yourself, the ones who start saying things like, you think you're better than us now, you've changed, you don't care about me anymore. Oh, so you have time for them, but not for me. That reaction alone tells you everything you need to know, because when someone truly values you, they don't demand access to you on their terms. They respect your need to grow, to heal, to breathe. But when someone's connection to you was always about what they could take from you, your time, your energy, your presence, then your distance is a threat. They were never really there for you. They were there for what you provided. And now that you're not as accessible, they feel abandoned, not because they truly missed you, but because they missed the role you played in their life. And the people who get angry when you pull away, here's something uncomfortable but necessary to understand. The people who get the angriest when you choose distance are often the ones who are benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Think about it. When you step back from someone and they lash out, why does that happen? It's because they lost control. They lost the easy access they once had to you. They lost the version of you that prioritized their needs over your own. And instead of asking, why does this person need space, they take it as an attack, and this is where manipulation comes in. They might say things to make you feel guilty, to pull you back in, to reestablish the old dynamic. They might suddenly be overly nice, showering you with affection and attention in a way they never did before, just to make you reconsider. But if that effort only comes when they feel like they're losing you, it was never about valuing you. It was about maintaining their control. Distance helps you see who you were tolerating. Sometimes we don't even realize how much we have been tolerating until we take a step back. The moment you create distance, you gain perspective. You start to notice things you didn't before. You see who only reached out when they needed something. You see who made everything about them. You see who never truly reciprocated your effort. And then you ask yourself, why was I holding on so tightly to people who never truly held on to me? That realization is painful, but it is also freeing, because now you are no longer bound by obligation, by habit, by guilt. You are free to choose relationships that are built on mutual love and respect, not just convenience. The right people will always respect your space. Here's the truth. People who genuinely love and care about you will never punish you for needing distance. They will never guilt trip you for prioritizing your peace. They will never make you feel like taking care of yourself is a betrayal. The ones who truly belong in your life will still be there when you return. They won't count the days you didn't call. They won't make you feel bad for needing space. They will trust the strength of your bond, because real relationships don't need constant proximity to remain strong. So if your distance is revealing things you don't like, trust what you see, trust who remains, trust who respects you, And most importantly, trust yourself enough to know that choosing peace is never the wrong choice. At first, choosing peace feels unnatural. It feels selfish. It feels like you are turning your back on the people who depended on you, on the relationships that once defined you, on the chaos that became familiar. You have spent so much time putting out fires that the idea of simply walking away from them feels wrong. But it's because for so long you equated love with endurance. You believed that caring meant staying, fixing, sacrificing. You believed that being a good person meant absorbing the pain, carrying the burdens, and showing up even when it was breaking you. So when you finally decide to choose peace, to step back from the toxic cycles, the manipulative relationships, the draining obligations, you don't feel relief right away. You feel guilt. You wonder if you're abandoning people. You wonder if you should have tried harder. You wonder if walking away makes you a bad person. That's the conditioning talking. That's the years of people pleasing, the years of self-neglect, the years of thinking your worth was tied to how much you could endure for others. At first, peace feels like betrayal, because chaos was comfortable. The truth is, many of us become so accustomed to dysfunction that peace feels foreign. We are so used to explaining ourselves, defending ourselves, justifying why we deserve respect, that when we finally step away from those situations, we don't know what to do with ourselves. We feel uneasy in stillness. We second guess our decision. We crave the familiarity of chaos, not because it was good for us, but because it was predictable. This is why people return to toxic relationships, why they go back to friendships that drain them, why they stay in environments that exhaust them. Because peace at first feels lonely. It feels unnatural. It feels like losing a part of yourself. But here's the truth. You're not losing yourself. You're losing the version of you that was created to survive unhealthy situations. Peace will cost you some people, but it will never cost you yourself. The hardest part about choosing peace is realizing that some people were only in your life because of the dysfunction. When you were always available, when you never set boundaries, when you prioritize them over yourself, everything was fine. But the moment you start protecting your energy, you start noticing who gets uncomfortable, who starts calling you selfish, who starts saying you've changed. But let's be clear, choosing peace is not a betrayal. It is not a betrayal of your family, your friends, your past, or your obligation. It is simply a commitment to yourself. The people who truly love you will respect your need for peace. They will support your growth, even if it means you have to take a step back. The ones who guilt trip you, who make you feel bad for choosing yourself, who try to pull you back into the chaos, those are the ones who thrived in your dysfunction. And that is not love. That is control. The shift from betrayal to freedom, at first, peace feels like running away, like giving up, like quitting. But then something shifts. One day you wake up and realize you are no longer exhausted. You are no longer constantly anxious, constantly explaining yourself, constantly trying to prove your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You are no longer walking on eggshells, no longer afraid of disappointing people who never considered how they were disappointing you. One day the silence no longer feels empty. It feels calm. One day, the distance no longer feels like loneliness, it feels like relief. One day, the peace that once felt like betrayal finally feels like freedom. And that is when you know you never betrayed anyone, you simply stopped betraying yourself. At some point in your life, you have to make a choice. Continue living for the comfort of others, or finally start choosing yourself. And the moment you choose yourself, the moment you set boundaries, step away from chaos, and stop allowing guilt to manipulate you, you will see people's true intentions. Some will understand, some will respect it, but others, Others will be angry. They will say you don't care. They will call you selfish. They will try to make you feel guilty for reclaiming your peace. But understand this, their reaction is not a reflection of your wrongdoing. It is a reflection of their dependence on your lack of boundaries. They are mad because you chose distance. They are mad because they can no longer control you. They are mad because they thrived in the chaos you finally walked away from. But here's the truth. You do not owe anyone your suffering. You do not have to stay in situations that drain you just to prove you care. Caring does not mean tolerating dysfunction. Love does not mean losing yourself. At first, peace feels like betrayal, but one day it will feel like freedom. And when that day comes, you will realize that the only thing you ever betrayed was the version of yourself that was never meant to stay small. So let them be mad. Let them misunderstand you. Let them say whatever they need to say, because the people who truly love you, the ones who truly belong in your life, will never require you to sacrifice your peace to stay in theirs.